All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be working on my Toyota FJ Cruiser. I have a weld-it-yourself bumper kit, and the goal for today is to at least get it tacked together and mounted onto the FJ. Let's get to it. All right, so that's the goal right there, and this is what we are working with. I went ahead and unboxed it. I did watch a couple videos on these kits being welded together and noticed that my kit came a little different. Not sure if Coastal Offroad changed things up as far as how they ship these out, but usually this piece is like separated into, I don't know, 4 different pieces, and looks like they just had it all in one piece. So less welding for me, which is awesome. Looked through the instruction manual and noticed that they have the parts all laid out together. So I went ahead and laid all the parts out together just like that, just to make sure that we're not missing any parts. If you follow the channel or follow my social media pages, you'll know that I bought this FJ Cruiser wrecked, kind of wrecked. It was hit right here. I went ahead and repaired it. I know things aren't lining up, but we'll fix that. We'll get everything perfect towards the end. I needed a new front bumper, and I didn't want to invest in the stock front bumper because I personally think they're kind of ugly. And since this is an off-road rig, why not put an off-road bumper on it? Well, the reason I want to make this video is because I'm not a professional welder by any means. However, I am someone who owns a welder, and I wanted to get into welding a little bit just for like DIY projects and whatnot. And basically the goal of this video is that if someone like me can do this, then you should be able to do this too. So let's not jinx ourselves here and let's get started. All right, so next what we want to do is remove the fascia, obviously. In my case, I already have it removed. And then we want to remove this reinforcement bar right here. And to get this removed, because this is where the bumper or the new bumper is going to mount up to, is these mounting studs right here. And I believe there's one on the inside. And to get to them, you're going to need a 14 mil socket. If you look at these bottom pieces right here, well, specifically these 3 and then these 3 over here, this is the stuff that we're going to work on, is getting these 3 pieces welded together. So I already went ahead and welded the 2 triangles together, and then there's the outer piece, and that's the outer piece right there. What I wanted to talk about here, this was a little confusing, but if you read through it, you'll get it. So on each side, there's 2 triangles. One is slightly bigger than the other on each side. And what we're going to do is we're going to tack the smaller triangle to the larger triangle. And we want to put it in a way where the larger triangle will sit on the outside towards us, or like the inside of the bumper. And then the smaller triangle will go on the inside. And the reason for that is this right here is going to be a tow hook or a recovery point, and this section needs to be beefy, so there's a good amount of metal here. And then the reason why there's a smaller triangle on the inside in between the 2 layers is because when we combine them all together, what's going to happen is you're going to see like a channel in the middle, and this channel is what's going to be filled in with weld, or when you go to weld it, the flux or whatever. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and combine all 3 together. We're just going to go ahead and tack it up. And then same thing on this side. Just make sure when you're welding these triangles together that you want them to be mirroring each other, per se. So this one's going to go like that. So yeah, just careful when you go to weld them together. And then there's a channel on the inside. Something that's going to come in handy, excuse the not so great setup here, but a vise. When I go to, when you go to put those 2 triangles together, this comes in handy to hold it in place. So the next step from here is we're going to take that piece right there. That's going to be like the base that mounts up to the frame. Once we get that centered and mounted, then it's just a matter of tacking on the rest of the pieces to it. So let's get to it. Okay, so heads up, when you go to mount this plate up here, make sure this AC line you're going to be touching, and you can see that I'm like barely clearing it. So you want to go ahead and push this AC line in, and be careful when you're pushing this in. There's a turn down here where it mounts to the condenser. Just hold on to, or like reinforce that part as you're pushing this in, because you don't want to kink that turn too much. So yeah, hold on from this side and then push in with this side, and it's fairly malleable. You'll see I can kind of push it on my own. Just like I said, don't kink it. Let's get to work. So here's the progress so far. Before I talk about what's going on here, I do want to say that we did have to remove a little bit more. There's a support bracket right here. This is what holds on to the bottom of the headlight assembly as well as the top of the factory bumper, I'm assuming. I don't have one, so I can't remember if the factory bumper mounted up to it. But anyways, that has to go, and to remove that, it's just a whole bunch of 10 mils. There's several 10 mils in this area, and then 2 10 mils right here, and then where it mounts up to the headlight assembly, there's like 2 spots, 1 and 2, and then same thing on the other side. What's cool about Coastal Offroad is they just went ahead and they put like slots, so you really can't mess this up. What you want to do is, once you get this main piece on, we're gonna get these side wing panel things on it, and like I said, just line up the slots, and then over here you just line up the hole. The instructions calls for an M12, but it doesn't specify the thread pitch. I did have some sort of M12. I just went ahead and kind of like fed it through as best as I can, but I don't want to mess up the threads. I am gonna stop by the hardware store at some point and get the actual M12 by 1.25s. I put that M12 in place just to hold this panel in place while I was tack welding it. Here's the 3 triangles that I was talking about. And if we look over here, look how nice and flush those 3 panels are. So weld this piece on, weld that piece on, or tack weld it. And then there's this piece that I'm pretty sure this is where the winch is gonna go. Might have to figure out, gotta remove that AC line out of the way. Let's talk about our welder and the settings here. You're gonna have to play with it a little bit. I think my sweet spot is going to be between speed of 7 and 8, and then level D or E, maybe C. The goal with MIG welding is you want it to sound like bacon sizzling on a pan, is what they say, and you don't want too much sputter, and you don't want to be melting through the metal. It is a pretty thick gauge metal, so it's pretty user friendly. And then if you are MIG welding or welding, I guess MIG, we want to make sure that we have shielding gas. Makes life easier. So this is the level I have it at. So it's, I don't know how full the tank is, but I have it at 15. What's the unit? Liters per minute? 15 liters per minute. That's for my shielding gas, and it's been working pretty good. It's not like I got dime welding here, but it'll do the job. And what's cool about welding is you can mess it up and then grind it down to make it look pretty. So at this point, we want to take this off and finish welding the inside over here. And then over here, we're going to fill in that seam before we put on that whole piece right there. So let's get to it. Got the center piece all welded together. I might have went overkill and, you know, did the whole bead in every seam. You probably don't need to do that. You could probably just do like 4-inch beads, and then like with a gap of 2-inch or something like that. I'm not sure what the rule is, but I just went ahead and did the whole thing. I welded every seam that I could find. Well, you do need to weld this inside part here first before you put that part on it. These you can get to later, but I figured, you know, since I already have it here on my little workbench, might as well just knock it out. Yeah, every seam that I did, and then you can see the difference between a weld or a weld bead that's not grinded down versus one that's ground down. Grind this down, I just went ahead and used my angle grinder with a flap disc on it. Smoothing that out. You don't really have to smoothen these out. It all depends on how bad your weld look. You can see over here is kind of where I started finishing off versus where I kind of started. So like my weld looked a bit trashy, and then it just like it starts getting better and better. And then depending on how easy I can access the seam, obviously the welds will look better. And then on the backing plate over here, this is the part that's going to, no, this isn't the backing plate. The backing plate's right here. So this is the backing plate. You can see where the slot went. I just went ahead and filled that up on both sides and then welded this seam. There we go. Let's go ahead and set this back down. And what I want to do is I want to grab this piece. Let's see if I can do this one-handedly. All right. Oh. Okay. So it's gonna look like that. Obviously we're gonna fix it up a little bit better. Get this all lined up. And we'll start tacking it. There we are. Probably need to hold this out. Let's get to welding. Probably call this the halfway mark, but here it is all tacked up together. We need to get it off and then finish welding up the filler welds, because right now it's just tacked up. What I did from the last scene or last video is I went ahead and tacked this center piece to the mounting plate piece, got it mounted to the FJ using the 14mm flange nuts. Once it's on and it's kind of like centered and level, you want to go ahead and start welding or tacking on these parts right here and those parts right there. And you'll start with tacking this part. So it'll go 1, 2, 3. There's a little triangle piece right here, and then the bottom plate will get tacked on. And what I find is really handy is these corner magnets. These help hold them in place together. So imagine on the inner wall, it'll go in like that, and then it's kind of like, it acts as an extra hand for you. And I'll go ahead and insert links in the description down below to these magnets. You could probably also find them at your local welding or hardware supply. For the heck of it, I'll go ahead and insert links to my welder setup as well. There are these end caps. There's these like little end caps, but you can't really get to them with the bumper on the FJ. They'll just fill in this gap right here so that it looks more complete. But we'll go ahead and tack those on once we get the bumper off. Oh yeah, there's one more part over here. So if you did opt for the tubular, either the grill protection or the headlight and grill protection, I only opted for the center grill piece. So I do have to get that mounted onto the bumper. So we're at the stage where we have the bumper off the car. I had it all tacked up, so now I'm just finishing up the welds. Here's the end pieces I was talking about. Went ahead and put them on both sides. Finishing up the welding on the inside, getting as much as the seams as I can. As far as the light mounts go, they supply you with 2 per side, and it's fairly self-explanatory. So there's one that looks all squared up. That's gonna line up with this side, and then there's one that has like a slight angle to it, so you can see that slight angle, and that's gonna go let's see, I'm doing this one-handedly. It's gonna go on like that right there. Use these angle magnets to your advantage. So I'm gonna go ahead and like place that right there, and then it'll hold it up. Got all these nuts and bolts on it. Anyways, we'll hold that up, tack it in place, and then we'll finish out the welding. I think we're all good with the welding. well, as far as the welding goes. I'm gonna wait to put the tube on the bumper. I'm gonna wait till it's mounted to the FJ just to make sure I have it centered and all that. But now we're gonna enter stage of grinding. We're gonna go ahead and grind down all these ugly welds. So that's the nice thing about welding, is you can make an ugly weld look pretty with a flap disc. So let's get to grinding. So here is the bumper. Got it all grinded down. The seams basically where the welds were. Got it nice and smooth. Really, you got to focus on the welds that are most visible when you have it mounted up to the truck. So like these spots right here. First off, it's kind of hard to get to with an angle grinder and a flap disc. And second off, it's really not going to be visible. As I'm doing this project, I am updating my Instagram stories. I have a few buddies reaching out to me saying, oh man, I wish I had the skill set and all that. I want to talk a little bit about the welding, the welder, and my setup. Now, I'm by no means a professional welder. This is all DIY, learned on my own, YouTube and all that. Sorry, I got my daughter over here in the background. Let's talk about the weld setup. And I promised a few buddies that I'll talk about this in my next welding video. My welder is a Lincoln Electric Pro MIG 180. Have it plugged into my 220. I know I should have its own 220, but this works for me. I mean, this is where I do all the welding. For this project, because it is thicker gauge steel, there's a lot more leeway, or it's easier to work with per se, because when you get into thinner metals, then you worry about melting through. If you have thicker gauge steel or thicker gauge metal, it's very user friendly. You're gonna go ahead and read the instructions over here. Well, obviously you're gonna set it all up. The wire that I have, I believe is 0.025 is the flux that I have. And you can get this at your local hardware store. I'll drop links in the description down below. You're going to look at this chart right here, and depending on the thickness. So I went with something similar to like a 10 gauge, and then you can kind of see here 10 gauge slash 3/16 of an inch. And then it calls for like 8E if you're using 0.025. And that's kind of where I went with it. So I was like 7 and D, close enough. Again, I'm by no means a professional welder. This is what worked for me. So you have that, and then you turn it on, of course. You also want a shielding gas. So a shielding gas helps, and I might be getting the science wrong, but it helps keep the environment hot, I think, between the metal and the flux. That way the metal bonds to the flux. But it basically keeps the welding environment in like the perfect environment for metals to combine with each other. Correct me if I'm wrong, please drop the comments down below. The shielding gas, we have argon, carbon dioxide. So you can find this at any of your local welding supply stores. You could also check your local marketplace for people who are selling tanks, but make sure if you do go that route, it is cheaper, but you just got to make sure that the tanks you buy are certified and they are eligible for replacement at the welding supply store. But let's talk about how I do the welds. So you are going to need some gloves. I do have some welding gloves right there. You're going to need a welding helmet so that you don't go blind. And the welding helmet I have is right here, Lincoln Electric, and it's auto dimming. What's cool about these is you can see through it, and then as soon as something bright goes off, like on the other side of the screen, it dims out so you're not blinding yourself out. We're gonna go ahead and turn it on, and then you always want to ground down your metal. Here's our flux. Let's see if we can focus on it. You could cut that tip off. So let's look at this example weld right here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come in, and then you don't want this tip touching the metal, right? You just kind of want to hover a little bit, and then you're gonna press on the gun, right? You press on it, flux will come out, and then it'll form like a bead. And if you have all your settings right and all that, it'll come out. And then make sure that the metal is clean too. If the metal's not clean, you're gonna get a lot of sputtering. If it comes out and it beads up like on the metal, then you know you have good contact, or whatever the term is. But once you form a bead, then you can kind of like go back and forth, and like you can do like up and down mode. Like I basically do circles. So I do like circles to like combine the bead to the top and the bottom, top, bottom, and I just do circles. and you just keep that bead going, right? And you want to keep the tip close, and then you also want to keep it at an angle. And there's also a little bit of an instruction right here how you do it as far as the angles go. Oops. So right here, 45-degree angle, and then if you have the two seams like that, yeah, straight down, and then 45-degree angle right there. So that's what's nice about these Coastal Off-Road bumpers is all the panels, when they line up with each other, there's a channel in between each seam so that you can get that weld to fill in, right? And then there's the one part right here which will go down, and then you just fill that in by holding the gun like straight forward. But yeah, it's really not that bad. To my buddies who are watching this, I was in your shoes literally 1 to 2 years ago, and I said there's no way I could do this. Right now we're at the stage where I went ahead, got it washed up. I used some dish soap and water. I think the route I'm gonna go is rattle can paint, and I'm probably gonna do the truck bed liner paint. I thought about doing powder coating. My thought process behind this is if I ever get this bumper scratched up again, I could just reach for my rattle can and just spray over it, instead of if it was powder coated, then I'd have to take the whole thing off and probably go get it re-powder coated. So that's kind of my logic there. All right guys, so here's the finished product. Went ahead and threw on the last fit LED bar that I had from my Ram 1500. Figured it looks better on this SUV. I went ahead and wrapped up the project by doing a self-etching primer, and I'll go ahead and insert links in the description down below. I just went ahead and used Rust-Oleum self-etching primer along with the Rust-Oleum truck bed coating. Now this project did take me a couple days to do because I went ahead and just took my time with it, and I had to wait a couple days for the paint to come in. If you have everything ready to go, this shouldn't take you too long, maybe 8-ish hours or so. But then you also got to factor in the time you need to let the paint dry, tack it all up. If you're like in a rush, probably can do it within 45 minutes to an hour. Obviously there is some time involved as far as taking the bumper off, but tack it all up. Then you got to do the welding, then you got to do the grinding, and then the paint or the powder coating. Yeah, we're just getting ready to do a little photo shoot with my brother's 4Runner here. The main goal of this video was to hopefully show you that this is really doable at home. Anybody can really do this as long as you have access to a welder and some tools. Hopefully I accomplished that with this video. That being said, we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up and cut to B-roll. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and drop them down below. It motivates me to do more of this kind of content. So yeah, we'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you guys for watching. Peace out.